listening to
A to the K.
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 A to the K WrestleTalk podcast.
Check it out. Change your life. You'll be thanking me later.
Okay, everyone, and we're back with the man, the moth, the legend. It's Tony Knox.
It
Hello,
is.
guys.
Hi, Tony.
Hello. So, Carl, should we talk about GPW then?
Oh, we need to talk about GPW.
It feels like so long ago. So I think, obviously, I joined GPW probably around 2004, 2005 time. That's where the first time I saw your good self, Tony. And I think, at the time, I was a wrestling fan who just wanted to get in the business. And I was like, okay, I lived in Skelmersdale. And obviously, GPW was in Hinley, I think it was at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go and join this wrestling school, way out of my comfort zone. And obviously, it was one of the best times ever, really. So I think I mentioned before when we spoke, obviously at the time, it was Lee Butler, who was the trainer initially. Obviously he has unfortunately passed away not too long ago, so obviously that's obviously quite a bit of a shame. But then so it was Lee Butler, and then I trained under Damon Lee and under Johnny Brannigan as well, with my kind of two main trainers. But I remember seeing your good self just kind of floating around in the backstage area and recording promos and stuff, and then the next minute you came out as Mothman. I was like, okay, who is this guy? So I guess, first question from us is obviously, tell us around, obviously, your time, how did you break into the business? Obviously, you do photography and stuff now as well for the business, as well as obviously you trained as an active wrestler. So tell us your story.
Okay. I had a few lost years. I went to art college. I managed to get kicked out of 2 art colleges, which was not once. But
Can you tell us the reasons why, or is that no go?
the first one was I moved out of the area,
Right.
And so I used to. I'm originally from Liverpool. Then I moved to, when I was 11, I moved to a place called Rainford, and when I was 18, I was going to Liverpool. I was going basically to St Helens Art College.
Mm-hmm.
And then the family kind of disbanded slightly. I ended up in Liverpool with my nan for a few months until I got evicted by my uncle. Then I had to end up in the best mates. And basically, during that point, I was going to art college, and because I moved out the area, moved towards Wigan, they said, like, you could come back only on the premise that you won't get in any other art colleges, so please get in another art college. So I ended up in Leigh Art College, and tried desperately not to get in, trying to be arrogant. They must have liked that, but not that well, because like a year later I was kicked out. I remember watching time stand still. It was literally one of them moments where like everything goes and you're like, that just happened halfway through this, speaking to me still. I'm sure this room just moved like that. And I just think I discovered girls, life, and other things, and constantly I was searching for the right girl. And strangely enough, she didn't exist. One lunatic to another lunatic. Really. Years later, a few years later, I ended up doing like a part-time photography course. But then, when I eventually did get girlfriends, I always moved away, either to like a different city or a different country. It was like a common theme. So I always used to follow the girls like a stalker. But outside the room. So basically, I ended up like traveling a lot around England. Used to hitchhike everywhere and stuff like that. So my photography developed because of that, because I was going on little adventures. And then I ended up documenting in Preston, outside Preston, the M65 motorway at the time. This is around 25 years ago. So there was like a tree village up in a place called Stanworth Valley, and So I became quite interested in heroic figures, but odd contemporary heroic figures. So hence, like they were anti-road protesters who were up trees. So there were 74, and it was the biggest tree house village in Europe. And I just happened to be involved in that. A few documentary photography, and then like when it was up a tree, and then I realised they were cutting down the trees. So just oblivious photographing, and I came to that point where they were like the sheriffs had come up to try and get people down, and I was just like, "Oh, if you cut the tree, I'll fall off and die, and that'll be your fault." So I realised at that point I was never going to be a documentary photographer because
you didn't want to die by falling from a tree, right? So
no, it wasn't that. It was the point that that if it was a photographer, I would have just gone like, "Oh, I'm just a photographer." But at that point, it changed, and I just went like, "No, fuck you. I'm obviously not a photographer. I'm here on this." So no, and just carried on taking pictures. So I think I realized at that point that the actions I end up submerging myself into certain bodies, and so that was a prototype to the wrestling. In a way, that metaphor was like after that I went to university, lived in Australia, done other interesting stuff, carried on my tradition of going out with foreign girls. After that all went pear-shaped, I ended up like going into wrestling and started like photographing heroic figures, kind of people who were kind of cross culture of like on the fringe but really interesting. So I started off in a really strange small little wrestling company, I would like to think, but it wasn't. It was actually All Stars, which is massive. I started off here All Stars in 2001. I think it was 2000 or 2001. So I was photographing people like Dean Allmark when Dean was 18, Robbie Dynamite, Robbie Brookside, Garen Grant was around, Jake the Snake Roberts was there. What is his name? Apollo. He's he does a gimmick now, PCW, PC. He used to be WWE. He was the Ring of Honor World Champion. He does this fantastic monster gimmick. Carl. It will come to me. PCM. So and he was around, and so I was photographing them guys like 20 years ago. So I've been doing it roughly about 3 years at that point. And then one day I came back from photographing a Royal Rumble in an All-Stars one in Southport, and I got the train with the wrestler, and I was talking to him about it, and then it dawned on me at this point, like I was at the age where either if I was ever going to do it, it would have to be now. So he just said, "Well, why don't you wrestle?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then GPW came, and I contacted Lee Butler, and then told him my plan to me to take documentary. I would work with GPW. I would go there. I would take their images. I would give them an identity, and this is some of my work. And when he saw me work, he was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And it was in exchange to do free training.
Did he stick to that? Did he? There you go. I thought that when you were like, "What? He's going to stick to free training?" Nah.
Lee never told anyone, so people would come around at the end, and they were like, £10, £5. I was like, "What? I'm supposed to be getting free training?" And he never kept his word. Ever.
No.
I remember speaking to Robbie Brookside. There's a funny story. I used to as well, like during the All-Star early part, like I've worked with All-Stars for years, for like many years. Only this year is like the first year in something like 19 years I haven't done one of the shows.
Wow. Do you know what, as well, I never realised that you worked for All Star. Like, obviously, I've only ever known you in GPW. And it's mad, really, because I was saying to Anthony before, we've been to All Star shows. So there was probably times before then that that I've probably bumped into you.
Yeah. But with All Stars, I would do like some of the Northwest and the occasional shows down south, where it was mainly like the Northwest things. But
Yeah.
I've known Brian like 19, 20 years, you know, a long time, 19 years. So I've known Tish before she got with Dean Ormond, who then became a husband. You know, I've known them years and years. Like, I remember one time All-Star show, they had, like, Brian went, "Oh, you like this guy?" And it was like a young, you know, Drew. It was Drew McIntyre. It was like
Wow. That's crazy.
Drew, and it must have been about like 19 at the time, 19, 20. And he might have been younger. And like, you know, I remember Drew getting in contact with him. And I said, like, he said, "Oh, I'm going for a trial with WWE. Could you send us some images?" Like, no problem. So sent him the images, and then like a short time later, he was on WWE for his first run, and I've seen him along the road years later. But I'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But
That's amazing, that though, isn't it? Like if you think about it, like he may have never even got that opportunity if he didn't have those headshots and those images and stuff. So crazy to think the role you played.
Like, I have virtually fuck all. He was a star, you know what I mean? It's one of them people. He's a Tony Storm. As soon as you see them, you're like, yeah, you are going to be on television. And you are going to win the big one, and you are going to be like such a huge star. Ridiculous. It's just some people have that gravitas, don't they?
Yeah. I think it's interesting to hear that, because obviously he way back when he was always a big guy. He's always been bigger than me, obviously, but he wasn't as sort of jacked as he is now, and that sort of thing. And he's had to work on his character, but it's fascinating to see that, like, you can see that sort of stardom in him so many years ago as well.
Like Brian did. Brian saw the stardom in him because Brian. Have you ever met Brian at all? Brian Dixon?
I've not.
No, I don't think I have.
He's amazing. I'll try and talk him into coming on the show.
Oh yeah, please.
That'd be great. Yeah.
But, he'll probably go, nah. However, I do a terrible impression of him, but other people do it amazing. Like G-Man does it impeccable. Guerrero does it impeccable. Like so many others. Like even people who've never met him, like, just emulate his voice. One of the things I remember him saying to me years ago, going, "The worst thing I ever did, Tony, would pay you."
The worst thing you did was pay you.
Yeah. You know, because I started it off as an art project. So for me, it was an art project. And when I was developing, doing the wrestling training, I remember Robbie Brookside turned around to me, and like, I did a series of screen prints at Tonka that ended up being fly posted around Liverpool and used for exhibitions. So Jake the Snake Roberts, who still said he'll take me out on a drink, but he didn't use the word either.
Maybe not now after the old DDP yoga program and whatever, but
yeah, he's on a different path now.
Is he?
You heard it here first, guys. Tony Knox.
But yeah, because Jake was also like one of them, like, incredible. Like, the funny story about his match was, like, he was against, I think he was part of, it was a one-on-one between him versus Ricky Knight Senior. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah, this is an All-Stars, and Jake forgot, like, how to wrestle during the match. And Ricky proceeded to, like, get really cheesed off with him, so he just ended up, like, taking his shoe off him and then started hitting him with it.
That's unreal.
I'm watching from the side of the stage, because I'm also, like, backstage doing stuff, talking to Nigel McGuinness, and Brian Dixon comes over and goes like, get him off the stage, get him off the stage. And like, so like Nigel McGuinness has to come out and make the save, you know, and Ricky goes off, like, and everyone was like, oh, just witness. And then about 40 minutes later, a knock, or 20 minutes later, a knock on his door to like do some images of Jake, you know, wondering if he's fucked off his head or whatever. And he came in, I came into it, and it was in a blue room. And I had my old medium format big camera and this big flash. And I just like, oh, can I get a quick shot? And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like that. And he just stood there, and it was the best picture ever. It's one of me, I'll send you a link to it, but it's one of my most favourite images.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just like this wonderful, warm person who was like, even though like 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, he was getting hit by a boot, you know, for just being off his face. But like,
No, he was an unreal character, Jake.
Sorry?
It's mad to think. It's mad to think that like someone of his stature just forgot how to wrestle, just because, you know, obviously, you know, the stuff he was going through at the time. Like for Ricky Knight to be like, you know, I'm going to, you know, get your shit together and just beat you up with a fucking boot, like, with his own shoe. Like it's unreal. Yeah, it's amazing.
The moral of the story is don't piss off Ricky Knight.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good moral to have that, to be honest.
That is definitely.
I like it. Lovely, but all right.
So like I've obviously, have you met Paige and stuff then? Obviously for
I met Soraya when she was 15, 16.
So back when she was still Soraya then?
Yeah. But she wrestled under a name,
Was it
Brittany Knight, wasn't it? I think.
Was it Brittany Knight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. Did you get like the same kind of vibes from her? Like she was going to be a superstar?
Oh god. Yeah, she was beautiful. She was so. I think she might have been like 15 or 17 when I met her.
Yeah.
Because I photographed her a few times, about only 2 or 3 times. Once in All Stars where she was just hanging out. Once at Morecambe, she was XWA. She was in a show there, and another one where RWA in Grimsby. So she was against the mum. Like I made sure I'd done a series of images of her downstairs. And it was strange because she was only young at the time. I was photographing her like that she was leaning on these like weight bench and stuff like that, and the mum was behind her, stuff like that. And you know, and I ended up selling them a few years later to like the newspaper and stuff like that. But it was obvious she would be a star. So one of the reasons, you know, sometimes you've got to be strategic. That people are going to be stars, so you're going to go to that. You're going to make sure you get that job.
No, definitely. I think one thing that kind of stood out was you seem to have a big grasp on who is going to make it. Do you know what I mean? Like the people we've been speaking about, you seem to have quite an eye for talent.
But I think, well, aesthetically, certain people, like, because my background's an artist, you know, I did end up after being chucked out of the 2 art colleges. One I could have potentially went back. The odd story is years later, before I went back into Leigh, not the art college, but I became artist in residence in the local art gallery project, and then years later I returned back to St Helens Art College and became artist in residence for like 2 years. And then during that time, that allowed me to do the wrestling project because I had access to all the dark rooms, the light rooms, to process the films, everything. So I had all that support. So that's what helped me develop that project. So the wrestling project stemmed from being like an artist in residence. So, and because I was getting European funded, that project, I could afford to do it. You know, but I just carried on. I carried it on because the conversation really came from the person who I would have to give most credit for, was probably Robbie Woodside.
Yeah.
Because at one point, Robbie turned around to me and he said, "You only seem to be concentrating on the American guys." At which point, I actually pulled a picture and came out and went, like that.
Nice.
Not so much.
But I realized at that point, I was like, well, with my skill set, I could make a difference. Why don't I treat this as an art project? Why don't I do this as a way of bringing British wrestling on a level of the American wrestling? Not that I could do that as a wrestler, but I could do that in the photography and making sure people look professional, they pose right, they look good, they lit right, they don't look like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And honestly, the amount of times where like a lot of good designers ended up coming in, but it took years of shit ones who didn't know what they were doing, and it was just heartbreaking for years. But it was like that continuous slog of working with companies, and like working with them. Like GPWs had some good poster designs over the years. They had some terrible ones to start with. Later on, it's like, because I knew that if I have a database of images, that I keep them on a thing called Dropbox. So I would get messages off people going, "Oh mate, have you got this image for this? We need this for this. We need this for this." And I'd be like, "Done." Oh,
yeah.
You know, so I wouldn't have to spend an hour and a half looking through 4 years of work on this previous thing for something. So I ended up developing a system that I could overcompensate for people's stupidity.
That's fair.
Yeah, like the amount of requests you must get.
Yeah, but it's difficult because I've always kept it as a project in a way. But it's surprising, like the amount of etiquette that people don't have. You know, they'll get messages off people going, "Hey mate, can you send us that?" It's like, no. I've never met you.
Yeah.
Back to GPW in 2004. So from like either late 2000 or 2001 to 2004. So in 2004, that's when I decided I was going to do GPW training. So I went to training, and a few months into my training, my dad died. So during that time, I had like a lot of anger, and the GPW really, really helped me, because I could go and go, you know,
become that outlet. Yeah.
People who were just like, that doesn't hurt, weaky cunt, you know. Mad, because they were bigger and stronger than me. So, but it was good, and it developed like I was training. When I was there, I actually recorded the sessions as well.
Right.
Video. So I've got like footage from the video on these old cassettes.
Well, do you know what? Like I remember seeing you recording, which I was like, you must have like something of me somewhere. I was only there for about 9-10 months or something. Like my biggest kind of rite of passage was probably the show we did in Bake Up, the City of Shoes. I remember I got in a car with guys that I had no idea who they were, but that is the wrestling business. And I got in the car, went up to Bake Up, and I was the referee in the Rumble match. With obviously Lee Butler was there, and I remember, like, I think I said to you in prior to this interview, he was like, you know, like Lee was, he was just like, tell this guy, you know, to call me a fat bastard. Tell him, you know, he's gonna do this, he's gonna do that. And I was there going to him, you know, call him a fat bastard. Like, you know, checking him down, make sure it's not got any weapons or anything. Call him a fat bastard, and he wouldn't do it. Lee was getting pissed off with me, going, fucking tell him to call me a fat bastard. I was like, I'm telling him. He won't do it. I was like, don't take it out on me. But yeah, like for me, that was my big show, the whole Bake Up show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lee was only 20 at the time.
I know.
Lee was like 20, so he was put in a position where he you know, he was going out with Roxy at the time. He was also going out with Sheep.
Yeah.
And you know, it was just like we were all, well, apart from me, like, but everyone was so young, and so, like, you know, because they had Joey there, Joey Hayes.
Yeah.
CJ.
Do you know what? I'm surprised like Joey hasn't made it, because Joey's got it, hasn't he? Like Joey is fantastic.
I think the only problem with Joey is Joey's just too lovely.
Mm.
He's so chilled. He's just such a chilled guy. And when he wants it, he doesn't show that he wants it. He kind of bottles it in.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's took some rubbish advice off people at various times. I remember years ago at FWA show, like Joey no-showed because he had it in somewhere else in, where was it? He had a booking in, it was in Holland, so he ended up taking the booking in Holland because he was getting paid for it, where the the FWA, no one was really getting paid because we all believed in like wanting to make the next generation, you know, it was about pushing it forward. We had like a really small budget and trying to continuously like, you know, do it as cheap as possible, and some of the wrestlers weren't getting paid and all stuff like that. So Joey took another booking somewhere else, and like Alex was so cheesed off. You know, Alex Shane was like, "Where is he?"
Yeah.
You know, because they were going to go over the Marty Skull and Zach, and you know, stuff like
No
that.
showed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
But Joey's just like, you know, I think that's the only time he's not ever no-showed for something. The rest of the time he's just there. He's there. He loves it. He loves it to this day. He gives everything. Like Joey's just like, people who wrestle him are like, "Oh my God, you're amazing."
Yeah.
You know, like I've wrestled him as Mothman. Like I got commissioned to do this Mothman Midsummer Madness thing in St. Helens. Like the first time I wrestled with GPW, I wrestled Adam Fate. It was, I think his real name wasn't Adam. I'm trying to recall it. Stu.
Stu.
It was. Like Stu just kicked the shit out of me. He like, the shots in the video, like where he just like lost his temper with me and kicked me in the head.
Oh shit.
But it's a trainee thing, you know what I mean? He shouldn't have been in that position where it was a trainee with a trainee. I should have been in with who could carry me.
Yeah.
You know, so I think in them respects that I made sure like the next match I did was with Joey, so I was safe. You know, so when I met, like I was with Joey, so Joey looked after me and got me through the match. And I remember that was a strange time, because when I was training with GPW to do that show, the Mothman Midsummer Madness, like this was in 2006, I think. Like the training school had closed down, and I went to, where was it, Bolton one day, and it was locked up. It was just like, what the frig's going on? And so I had like 6 weeks to try and learn how to train as a wrestler again. So I ended up going to Future Shock. And, and so like Future Shock, Dave Rain was there. And so as soon as I walked in, he was like, "Hey Tony." I was like, "Hey Dave, what are you doing here?" And some of the other guys were there as well, like Larch, stuff like that, and Lanthony. And so when I was there, like Sam Bailey was one of the trainers as well. So Sam was training me. They had the guest trainer of Nigel McGuinness at one point as well, and like Nigel came in. I learned more of Nigel McGuinness in like an afternoon than I learned during months. He explained certain the principles that weren't particularly drilled into us all. Like Nigel was on about the fact where you walk around the ring and you just do that turn. You turn to, but it was never explained, that basics. And I was like, "Oh my God, that makes so much sense." Like when Nigel McGuinness explained it to me. Yeah, and
Nigel, like Nigel he's an absolute legend. He's so like nuanced into like the whole industry. Like I was saying to Anthony before, I remember a GPW training session where I'm not sure whether it was Damon or whether it was Johnny, and we were doing like some sparring like kind of stuff, and they were like, why would you not try and pin this guy for 3 seconds? And it was like, you know, WWE like has this whole kind of thing of like, you know, you're being pinned, but you don't look like you're being pinned, and you can kick out anytime. And it's like, you should be fighting to get out of this pin. And it's like these little nuances just make wrestling.
Yeah, as Nigel McGuinness explained to us as well, he's like, when you're down on the floor, you're not going to stay there for 5 minutes and go, oh, waiting for the TV break.
Yeah.
You get up immediately. Yeah, you know, and that just drilled into me, and I was like, oh my God. And it was like when Robbie Brookside took a GPW training session, and Lee Butler wasn't there at the time, and we didn't have a ring at that stage. We only had
just mats. The mats. Just the mats. That's
where
where I was
there. They weren't like mats like that. They were like little.
They were like PE, like cardboard mats. Like I felt.
They were PE mats. So when we were taking a bump, which killed us, it was like, take a bump. Yeah, fuck. You know, but we were tough as anything, you know, but we took the bumps. I remember when Robbie came, Robbie Brookside, seen it, and he went, you're taking bumps on them. And he was furious.
Yeah.
He said, you're not taking bumps on them today. You could see if Lee Butler would have been in that room, he would have been battered.
Yeah.
Because his face, Robbie's face was like...
Do you know what? I wish I was there for that, because I did cross-body training onto them mats off that little box. That was not nice. That was not nice.
It was just like, I've got footage of that, so what I'll do is I'll try and
please find me.
Oh, that'd be ace, yeah.
I am like, you know, this thin, no facial hair whatsoever. Yeah. But you know, yeah.
It'd be funny to see everyone dead young, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
You're like a 15-year-old Juice and stuff, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like for me, it was like Juice. It was like TJ Kane. It was like these guys who were there, who were, you know, helping me through it, because for me, it was like, it was my first time away from home, almost, just like, you know, mixing people that I didn't really know. You know, Lee Butler was a bit, he didn't really care. And then like Damon Lee was fantastic. Johnny was fantastic. They kind of like got me on the right track and stuff. And it was those old guys, like, especially like the makeup show and stuff. I remember, I can't remember the name of the girl who was like from Sunderland. And she was, yeah, who was it?
It's Sarah.
Sarah.
Her name was. She recently had a kid as well. What's her name? Gorgeous as well, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I remember training with her quite a bit. And I was thinking, bloody hell, this is great, because she's like beautiful. But at the same time, like she was like, I remember she was being so good, like character work, because she was like, people would be like, oh, go back to Biker Grove, and she's like, I'm from Sunderland, and it was so good. Yeah, she was great.
I think it was Miss Sarah's. What was it? Oh, it was something. I'll remember.
Yeah, just blurt it out at some point.
Yeah, it begins with M. I'll check my own files.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's one of them. But she was actually quite good. There was a lot of people who had like a lot of potential though in GPW. But like when I was doing the Mothman thing, like I was there from some like about 4 or 5 months training, or less, maybe 3 or 4. So I put a tremendous amount of pressure on myself to do like a match under a stupid amount of time with very little training. And when it did it, it was thanks to Damon Lee. I owe everything to, because I turned up with my Mothman costume and everything, and saying to Damon like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be on the show." He was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I arranged it with Lee Butler."
No one told him.
No one. Lee fucked off. Like he hadn't told anyone. He hadn't told them what I was doing with the project. For once, he had to bring me work and explain to them. People were like, "What?" I had no idea. And because Lee didn't tell anyone, it just.
I mean, it sounds very Lee. It sounds very Lee.
I remember the time like Alex, like I mixed the bit where Alex Shane had like Lee had been spreading shit about Alex because he wanted the booking, so Alex like turned up he was supposed to be on the show, and Alex just leaded him, and and it wasn't on the rest of the show. But I've seen Alex the first time in a takeaway shop, and he was this huge man in Lee. And then I took a picture of Lee Butler's cut and everything, and mysteriously, I never gave it him or never passed it on. I was like, oh no, it didn't turn out. I was like, I'm not shitting on Alex Shane. And no. I was like,
Nice.
mysteriously, it went missing.
The hidden photo.
Alex was like, no evidence here, sir. No evidence. So, yeah. But Lee Butler was, it's a shame because he had 2 kids. And I think he went through very dark times, Lee, and fell out of wrestling and stuff. And at the end of the day, he wasn't very accomplished as a wrestler, but he tried to instill a lot into a lot of people as well. He did a lot of good, and he helped a lot of people who wouldn't have had that opportunity.
No, definitely. I think I found out quite recently. I wasn't actually aware that he'd obviously passed away and stuff, and it was such a shame because obviously he had his faults obviously, but at the same time he was like my first trainer, so it was bittersweet.
I like the thing that he gave everyone, like their do's and don'ts. He gave us a list of like, make sure you shake everyone's hand.
Yeah.
He kind of instilled that like etiquette of like, you go in, you look everyone in the eye. Everyone at this point is important because that person brushing up might be the owner of the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Treat everyone with respect, and if you don't, he'll bollock you.
No, defo. I think I remember during a training session. I think it was with Lee. I'm not sure, but we had to do the kind of like show your punches and stuff like that. And I was there like doing it, whatever, and it was fine. And then they did it to me, and I was just like, oh. And like Lee said to me, like, stop. I was like, oh shit. Like Lee's fuming. He was like, if you would have been punched like that, you'd be on the floor right now. He was like, you need to show these guys respect. And I was like, oh fuck. Like, I didn't realize, like, I was dropping to a knee. I was like doing all this, but I didn't realize, like, and he was so good at like showing when to do the right thing, if that made sense.
Stocky lad, when he was a big lad.
Oh god, he was stocky is an understatement. He was massive. Yeah.
He was broad as hell.
Oh god, yeah.
Funny, but I think sometimes his humour was a little bit cutting on a lot of people. Like,
no, defo. I think. I mean, to be fair, I only trained Lee for a couple of months. I think it was mainly Damon and Johnny who were like my trainers and stuff. But those guys were fantastic as well.
Lee allegedly broke his neck in a sliding down. He came up with loads of lies. He probably owed money and just done a runner. But like, he broke his neck or something like that. But for a lot of people like Joey, I think Joey was very upset that Lee was like, he only had good things to say about Lee.
Yeah.
It was a shame because like I think. He added me on Facebook a few years later and like had a little chat with him, and then he deleted everyone again.
As you do.
Well, as he did. But,
well, yeah.
I used to have people from Facebook from years ago. But
yeah.
He just like it's unfortunate because he had children and
yeah.
No, it's horrible, isn't it? It's such a shame.
Yeah. His life, he brought, without him, GPW wouldn't have existed, and a lot of people wouldn't have made it.
No, definitely. I mean, like the likes of me wouldn't have found a wrestling school if it wasn't for him, because he.
That's the thing. I mean, for 2 lads in the north who absolutely love wrestling, it was certainly. I mean, obviously, I never pursued it, but Carl, you had the balls to do it. It was certainly a brilliant option for, like. I mean, to be fair, there's like. The British wrestling scene's grown since we were kids as well, but it was certainly one of the better options for us as kids,
Yeah, trained how to, buy somebody a new wrestling.
But that's the thing. I mean, it is a difficult business as well. Like as Carl alluded to before, like knowing when to play your part is a really difficult one. So it's more of an art form than people realize, I think, for that reason.
It's without a doubt an art form. I think that was one of the things why I became so submerged in wrestling over the past 20 years, nearly.
Yeah.
20 years. Because it's that point, it's such an odd, weird mix of dysfunctional people.
Yeah.
Minx,
It is funny, like, because I think...
I think it was Minx. Sarah's name.
It was Minx. Yes.
Yeah.
As soon as you said that, I was like, it was Minx. Yeah. No, honestly, Minx or Sarah, whatever, was great. I thought she was so, like, you know, she was like, yeah, you know, do this on me, do like, and like, yeah, do the sunset flip, whatever. And she was, yeah, she was really cool.
Yeah, she was excellent. Good wrestler. And there was quite a few ones who were quite young, vibrant. You know, there were so many people there who have potential. But I think if it wasn't for GPW, there wouldn't have been a Future Shock.
No, definitely.
Right.
No.
Yeah, take your point.
You know, so Future Shock was because GPW existed and so on and so forth, and other training schools. You know, and there's been so many different transitions. But I think as a photographer and artist, I think if it wouldn't have done the training thing, I don't think my work would have been as developed as it has been.
I think that's a fair point, you know, because it gives you a different appreciation, doesn't it? So it changes what you're looking for in some respects, I imagine.
Yeah, but as well, I think that's why I can spot talent a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I've been to the training and where I've been around other people and I've been in the ring.
Yeah, and you know what's needed of them.
Yeah, every now and again, just off me off man thing. I remember one match I had. It was PW, it was. I thought he was winding me up at the time when Steve booked it, but he was genuine. I was photographing his wedding. He said, like, the day before, he said, "How'd you fancy a match with Hammer?" And I was like, Sean Hammer. It's like 6'6" or 6'7".
Sure, yeah, great.
But I remember backstage, I was doing that, and I was talking through the match, and I got Dean Allmark was there, and I was like, "Dean, what do you think of this?" And Dean just basically orchestrated, like, "This is what you should do. This is how you should do it. Take this, do that." And I was like, "Thank you, Dean." But I've known like Dean Allmark to me is like the GOAT.
Yeah.
He's wrestling. He is like crazy. He's so good. You know, and I think the future is going to be Adam Maxted. Is going to be a massive deal.
Right. Note that down, Carl.
No, yeah. We will make a note. Tony Knox says. I think it'll be like on the show. Tony Knox says.
Yeah, and to be honest, we're by no means as involved with the British wrestling scene, but we do like to try and spot talent before they propel themselves into the big time, you know. So
details like stuff like that. He's great. He's a lovely lad.
Oh yeah.
We can never meet. Very humble, always accommodating. Lovely
Spot on. Yeah.
But,
so
he's got all written all over.
Yeah. And do you know what? I'm glad you're on the show as well, Tony, because I'm hoping you might be able to settle a debate for me here. Because I distinctly remember Zach Gowen being at a GPW show, right? And Carl.
Well, I think it might not have been GPW. It might be
apologies.
All-Star Wrestling.
Was it under the All-Star banner? I know.
It was basically
it was a lot of the people you knew, Carl.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it was in Ormskirk. And I remember Zach Gowen being there. And Carl tells me that he doesn't.
I don't remember Zach Gowen being a part of All-Star Wrestling.
Zach Gowen?
Sorry, the fellow with the one leg who was in WWE for a time.
He might have been, but I
never the debate.
Can't settle it, so therefore it didn't happen. Didn't happen.
Carl doesn't remember it, and I'm like, no, that definitely happened, Carl. But yeah. Is what, sorry?
What was the venue that you've seen him?
The Civic Hall in Ormskirk. I don't know if you remember the town.
Yeah. Drill does there now.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So wrestling shows are still going on there. I'm not sure.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But Daryl. He's nice lad.
Oh, yeah.
Quite an
Are we
interesting
that?
person. He sounds like very sad.
Do you know what? For the sheer nostalgia, I think we need to go to one of them shows.
They're actually really good shows. They've got really good.
Yeah.
You know what, I think like now more than ever we need to like support like local shows. Like
Oh, definitely.
I was saying to Anthony, like we saw one or two like local shows before everything that that happened pandemic wise and stuff, and I'm like, we need to like get back out. Not like once everything settles, we need to be back out there and like supporting these guys.
Well, I think during this time it's going to be a long time until the shows go on. I mean, like,
Unfortunately.
2 shows in one day, and I believe they got a lot of flack online but everything was done correctly, like temperature before we even came in the building. All had to wear masks backstage. Everything was done like to the booth. The police came in twice to check. They were so delighted by everything for the ground.
Sadly, it's it just becomes a media storm at the minute. The minute anyone holds anything, doesn't matter how well you adhere to it, people just jump on it. Unfortunately, at the minute.
Well, there's a lot of. I think the problem is that during the past few years, is you've let the fans dictate. The fans are people who. This probably get me loads like, ooh, he's a villain. But the fans are there to be entertained, not to book a show, not to comment on people's personal lives.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and I think, unfortunately, fans with the best intentions are very toxic.
Yeah.
Damage.
No, sadly, it is unfortunately a larger part of the fan base than I want it to be, where you do get a lot of toxic fans, and it can have an impact, unfortunately, because like you say, they're not there to book things, but they are heard. You know?
Yeah, the best thing they could do is buy a ticket, enjoy the show, and cheer, and that's it. You know, not comment on people's personal things.
Agree.
No.
Yeah.
Like if you want to do something to support a wrestler, buy the merch. Don't have to.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's the best way to support anyone.
Yeah, definitely.
We've noticed from your Instagram, you're working a lot with TNT by the looks at the moment.
Yeah, well, I've been with TNT since the second show. The only times I've ever missed any of the shows, I've got Lisa to cover for me. She's cool. She's nice.
Yeah.
Lisa, Patricia, I've plentiful pictures. I think I've only missed 2 shows. But, in 5 years. I even rescheduled my operation by 2 days, so I could do.
Wow.
So that is commitment. I like it.
Commitment.
I shit you not, that is actually true. When I was going into hospital, like that was the day where Cody Rhodes was in Liverpool. And, like it was like a 5 venue, and I was in hospital getting my kidney out.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
worst time ever.
Yeah, but it was just So I did like the kidney transplant, and within a month I was back, like doing stuff. Well, 28 days later, I was in Rise, photographing Rise. That's a really good company.
Yeah.
If you ever get the opportunity to go to Leeds and see Rise Underground Wrestling, please see it.
Yeah, one to watch.
It's just wonderful. You can see. I'll get him on the show.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Would you say Rise is probably the best in Britain right now?
Rise is different from everything.
Right.
There's no best. It's just fucked up. It just
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like what caters to your taste kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's got different tastes. Everyone's got a favourite, and I think the worst thing that people do is they categorise. This is the best. You know, at the end of the day, it's subjective. You know,
Yeah.
some
Mm.
things toxic and some things are wonderful.
It's I suppose it's like most art forms, isn't it? It is very subjective in that sense.
Yeah. Well, TNT is, if you get the opportunity, go and see a TNT show.
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, we actually discovered TNT through Lizzie Evo, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah.
There's obviously, forgive me if I'm spoiling things here, Carl, but you're looking at setting up a charity event yourself, aren't you? So we've been speaking to TNT and to Lizzie Evo for that reason.
Yeah.
But
charity.
Charities. Tony's like, you're not going to pay these guys? What the fuck? But no, yeah. No, I decided to have the crazy idea of for my 33rd birthday.
33rd, it'll be,
How old am
Carl.
I? For my 33rd birthday, to do a wrestling show, a charity show to support all the hay. Obviously,
The aim is for you to lace up your boots again, isn't it, Carl?
It is. It is to lace up the boots again and to have that main event show that I wanted when I joined GPW, but never got.
And put yourself as the champion.
Well, that's the plan.
Actually.
I'm going to be a champ. Great booking knowledge, Tony. Yeah, so I think me and Anthony are probably going to be the main event.
Champion.
Yeah,
I'll start the promotion, and I'll be the world champion.
well, that's it. We're gonna do me versus Anthony, and Mothman's gonna get involved, and he's gonna fucking get Anthony out the picture, and I'm gonna pick up the win. That is the plan.
But yeah, so we were talking about this sort of Carl fulfilling that sort of childhood dream, as it were, and that sort of led us towards noticing TNT because obviously they're probably the most local to us.
Yeah.
So they sort of hit our radar because of that, really.
Yeah. Well, Jay Apter's a really interesting guy to speak to. He's incredibly humble. He's funny as he's mad as a hatter. Not in a like mental health way. He's mad as a hatter and like exciting and fun.
Yeah. I think you need a touch of madness in the wrestling world, to be honest.
He's just like the guy doesn't know when to say no. He's in his head he wants it to be as big as it can be. He's just a bit of a visionary of it. He needs to
I can admire that inspiration, to be fair.
Jay Apter's good. And speaking about childhood, I think like this week, I don't know what the fuck's going on with my head, but I ended up pitched in 1977 like Star Wars.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And like not just one, but getting Chewbacca as well. But like,
of course,
amazing.
eBay, the power of eBay.
The way to do it.
That's right, guys. Tony Knox originals on eBay. You heard it here first.
6 years old, so
nice.
My childhood memories was watching Star Wars.
Yeah, defo. So hopefully, I think Lizzie will hopefully be a part of our show if we manage to host.
Yeah, a few more TNT mods as well. To be fair, Liverpool locals, isn't it? So that's one of the main.
We are currently struggling for a venue. Obviously, with everything going on, people wanting not to commit.
Sadly, we had the inspiration and then COVID hit, so that was great. So not to say I can't do a good segue. You'll probably learn that if you ever listen to our podcast. But I'm curious. Obviously, your involvement with the British wrestling scene over the years, for decades even. I'm curious how you feel about NXT UK. Now, I'm not asking you. It's not a loaded question by any means, but obviously they've come along and they're a WWE behemoth. So it's had an impact, certainly some companies that I watched, WCPW being one of them, are now no longer existent because of them. So I'm just curious how you feel about the impact they've had.
I worked for What Culture. So, the Defiant. I worked for them, so I used to go to Newcastle, and I worked with them during the heyday as well. So one of the things was that YouTube had changed the whole, like they were a really successful business model, and then when YouTube changed,
Yeah, the way they do the monetization changed drastically, didn't it?
So that was probably due to WWE having a private conversation with them saying we will take all content.
Yeah, most likely.
But that was the demise of them, because like a lot of businesses, a lot of money was going to other companies apart from the WWE. I think with the WWE UK, I personally haven't had an involvement. I know all the people. I've not worked with them. I've never worked with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing, because obviously the UK base, so a lot of the people involved, you're gonna know them. You know what I mean? It's it's naturally going to happen. Decades in the business, you're going to know a few people. Even, I mean, we've got Zaya Brookside, haven't we? Obviously, so you know her dad. So there's that connection there. Is what? Sorry.
Zaya's first match.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know Zaya. I've known Zaya years.
Yeah, because she's an up and coming in NXT, but obviously she's been in the indie scene. Yeah.
Yeah, she has. Zaya's a nice girl.
Yeah.
I've shared car journeys with Zaya. I think one of my favourite things about wrestling is doing car journeys with a lot of the guys. But a lot of guys are going to gravitate towards NXT. I think NXT is a great thing because you've got to look at it in another point of view. So there's a lot of guys who would turn up at a show and they would tear the house down, and all 30 people who watch them, yay! And then they've gone on to go into bigger venues. So people switch on the television and go, oh, I remember him. I watched him, and like there was only 30 of us here, and he's on telly. So if I go to another local wrestling show, someone might end up on telly. Who is he? And there's a high probability. And I think like the lockdown in some respects for NXT UK has probably been the best thing, because it's gone like reset. If you've seen it recently, of the shows, there's so much, like even to an empty arena, the shows are amazing. Like they're doing it as though it's a British product. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like an American product. It feels kind of a hybrid, but looking at it, it's great television. A lot of the promos are done well, like everything's done well. It's giving people hope to aspire to. Like, I think it's tight that people like Joey Hayes haven't got an opportunity. Yeah, I think it's pathetic. Like people like CJ Banks haven't got the opportunity. People like Lizzie Evo hasn't got the. But Lizzie's only like 21. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she's sort of starting out, really, isn't she?
No, she's been doing it for 7 years.
Oh no, you know what I mean. But she's still got plenty of time to aspire to that sort of stuff.
She was the last Defiant champion. She's the TNT champion. She potentially Lizzie could be one of them people.
Oh yeah.
The only problem is she supports Liverpool, and that's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
I even spoke to her about that. I'm a Liverpool fan, but I said like, what might be a good idea if you become a champion of the city instead of the division of Liverpool versus Everton. If you have a thing of like, I've come to unify the city. Doesn't matter if you're a blue. It doesn't. And she's like, no.
Can't do it.
Sadly,
can't do it.
When you speak to an Evertonian, that kind of thing happens,
It's true,
Carl.
Listen, I mean, I love Lizzie, but at the same time, nah. If she was an Evertonian, on the other hand, sound.
Yeah, okay, if she was. So, it's one of them things. It's like sometimes I think people have got to adjust to a popular culture.
Oh yeah.
Of like ironing out certain aspects of themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
I think recently over like this year, it's been very strange for wrestling. I think it'll be great when it comes back, but I think people need to change.
Yeah. I mean, you're totally right. I mean, the environment as a whole has changed. Like for the big fish like WWE, where you suddenly can't have an audience and you have to adjust to that. Like to be fair, yeah. I mean, the thing is, they were big for reading the audience, and to not have that all of a sudden is really must be kind of strange to them. But yeah, I think they have adjusted really well. I mean, personal opinion, in all fairness, I think AEW have handled it probably better, but again, it's a matter of different tastes, I suppose. I don't know if you follow both products, but certainly for us, I think AEW have handled the lack of audience a little bit better in some respects.
I think as well, it's less. It just feels less scripted, doesn't it? WWE sometimes put on great, but then they just throw away talent and don't have a storyline, and losses mean nothing.
That's the thing. I think because they both have the strength. I mean, production value is uncomparable when it comes to WWE. You know,
they're incredible. There's no point slagging them off. You know.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, we're like everyone ends. When you look at it in this way, like wrestling, it's a TV product. So
It is.
all they're doing is when they're talking about things, talking about it passionately, and you're just thinking, wait a minute, you're just talking about a TV show. Have you got all else in your life? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
True.
It's a television show. That's all it is.
You know what? That's the funny thing. Like, one thing that seems to, like, I don't know if you feel this way or you even, Carl, but like, there was a time in the 90s when people genuinely didn't realize wrestling was, and I'm not going to say fake because that's a bit of a trigger word. But it's scripted. It's predetermined, right? And people didn't seem to realize that. And then we get to a point now where anyone who's a wrestling fan, we know it's predetermined. We know that there's a level of theatrics to it. But then you still get people who go, you know, it's fake. And it's like, yeah, we kind of do, but that's not why we watch it. And it's almost become a thing where the people, there's like a small sort of subsection of people who don't realize that everybody knows it's scripted. Do you know what I mean?
It's kind of like saying, like, why don't you get in contact with Tom Holland and say, you haven't really got superpowers, have you?
Exactly. Like, we're all watching it. We know exactly what the product is, but there seems to be this group of people.
It's entertainment.
Exactly. That's exactly what, and that's why obviously WWE many moons ago rebranded World Wrestling Entertainment for that reason.
And they made shitload of more money.
Well, yeah.
Maybe the stuff, instead of seen as violent, was seen as less violent because they realised they had to move with the times and they hit chair shots. But when you see people emulate, you know, when you've been to like local shows yourself, Carl, and you've seen like shots, and someone's got a chair and they've twatted someone over the head, and like oh, and there's blood pumping, like oh, and you just think, like, I don't think, wow, that's great. I think in my head, you soft twat, you know, because like, you know, people can get brain injuries, people can get really hurt. Like, you know, Nick a few years ago, who, you know, got really hurt and he can't walk and he's going to get home. And, you know, they are casualties of wrestling.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I think the fans have got to appreciate that everyone who's there. Because people are vulnerable. There's a lot of people in wrestling who are quite vulnerable. They mightn't have much in their lives. They might have had a shit childhood. They might have broke up with the partners or whatever. You can't presume to know that person. You can only know a character. That's why I feel like wrestling shows, the basic thing what they should do is to make sure that people have got food. People have got, like, you know, put on a little spread for someone. Just put a little spread on, put some drinks out, and that way that everyone's got the basic requirements to kind of
I think, you know, like for me, wrestling is like one of the oldest art forms. It's like something where people can go with their families and enjoy something. You know, they're going to get some beverages and get some food. They're going to enjoy a show, and it's like that is what wrestling is. Yeah.
It is. It's escapism. It's escapism.
Yeah.
It's also allowing the wrestlers to live out their fantasy.
Yeah. And you've got like these kids, you've got these like people who are watching it going, do you know what? I want to be this person. I want to grow up to be like, and as long as you set a good example and, you know, you make it a good show, then, you know, wrestling is one of the finest art forms, I think, for me.
it's wonderful. Like
Yeah.
if you've ever seen like Grizzly Young Vets, you know, Jade Zach, I mean, just outstanding.
Yeah.
You know, same guys have, like, if it wasn't for COVID, they were going to be moving over to America. You know, but it's allowed them to spend time with the families and do other stuff. You know, and develop, you know, fighting spirit training school. So it's not all bad. I mean, what happened, and it's just allowed things to reset. And I think the issue of this year is that, you know, you've had a trial by internet of a lot of people have been accused of a lot of stuff. I mean, certain people who might have done certain stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's not even just the British wrestling scene. It's been everywhere, hasn't it?
It's quite wide.
Yeah,
and it's just. But what you'll get as well is people making up fictitious stories about people.
Sadly, that's the truth of it. Is that you have to try and wade through the fictitious ones and find the real ones. You know, because people will be sort of, for lack of a better term, coining in on the movements itself and going, well, that'll get a bit of money or a bit of attention or a bit of whatever. And it's trying to find the genuine cases versus the fake ones. It's it's a bit of a storm, really, in itself.
It is, and I think it's just become, as soon as a fan starts going, well, this person was mean to me while he was playing a heel.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Then he done his job.
Yeah.
Because you had emotion. And when you acted at the end of the match, you felt great about yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's called theatre.
Oh yeah.
Back to what you said, it's the purest art form. And when it's done perfectly well and it's done right, and you know, it's wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely.
My girlfriend, like, I've been with her about 5 years, and when I first took her to a wrestling show, I was like, could you hold the camera and do things? And she was like, okay. And she was like, yeah, it's okay. She didn't understand it at all. It's like, you know, she looked at me and went, but you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I think as well with something like going back to NXT UK, the great thing is about it, what they've done right this time, not the first time. With the reset button with COVID, it's allowed them to be on terrestrial TV, to be on BT Sports, to promote the brand, to actually say, well, this is going on and these people will be on this show. So if anything, it's allowed a lot of people to have opportunities. And also, like, the WWE are only saying to some of the talent, don't work a shit show with no medic. That's all they're saying. They're not saying, like, don't work shows. They're saying you cannot work a show if they haven't got a paramedic. Because if anything goes wrong, if you've got a concussion, we can't use you for television.
Yeah. In all fairness, it's a reasonable request, isn't it? Let's be honest.
They're investing X amount of money into that individual, so they've got to safeguard their investment.
Yeah.
And they're allowing people to do shows. It's not like they're turning around and go, you will only be exclusive to us. You know, anything, they're enriching wrestling, but they're also allowing the wrestler to maybe charge more money. But in all fairness, like, you know, why the guys don't charge much anyway? Why should, you know, what's wrong with them making money?
Exactly.
You know,
True.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're probably on less money than someone on a shit job. You know, unless I
think, to be honest, that's what a lot of people don't seem to realize. Like, I don't know if you've been paying much attention to the sort of let's say media storm over WWE restricting wrestlers when it comes to, like, making money outside, like using Twitch and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people, like, they've come almost to the defense of WWE, going, "Oh, these wrestlers are paid millions." It's like, that's not the case, actually. Most wrestlers aren't. You know, even in WWE, most wrestlers aren't. You know, you're talking the big fish when you're talking about that. And obviously the indie scene again is a totally different animal. So I think a lot of people don't realize like they're putting their body on the line for not as much as you'd think, in all fairness, in terms of a paycheck.
Yeah, well, only the top talent make the money, don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
I think if someone's got a huge Twitch following, and if someone's got other sources of revenue, then they should be, as long as it doesn't affect their performance and them being available for other things.
Exactly.
It should be incurred to say, well, at least they're setting up something for when they leave wrestling. At least they've still got relevance and they've got money. So
that's the thing.
That's probably potentially more about greed, isn't it?
I would say so, to be honest, because I think you touch on a good point there, that a lot of wrestlers, when they leave the business, they struggle to find an outlet. Certain wrestlers keep coming back to the business because it's a very addictive business to be in. So yeah, set themselves up now. That's the way to do it, and then they've got somewhere to move to. I mean, Paige's or Saraya is a prime example. She's been retired from the business, very unfortunately, and Twitch is. And she's so emotionally connected to her Twitch fan base because of that. And I totally understand that.
Well, I remember when Paige was going out with Del Rio, she turned up at a Defiant show, so I hadn't seen her for a while. So, like, she's still the same girl as she was years ago. She ran over to me and went, "Hi, Tony." She remembers me. And, it was touching, like,
Oh yeah, of course.
From like a young girl to a woman, and she's still the same girl. She wasn't anything else, but she was still this like lovely.
Isn't it nice that like the fame hasn't really changed it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
she was lovely.
Yeah.
Her brothers are lovely. I've known them years. Like, I remember photographing Zach, like backstage. And he was like 14. He was a 14-year-old kid, about 13, 14. And he went, "I'm a wrestler as well." He was like 14.
Boss.
So I took this portrait of him. It's on. I'll send you it. But he's like a little kid, and like seeing him grow into a.
That's the thing. It must be quite surreal now because he's part of the Hooligans with his brother, isn't he? So
he's lovely, but he's massive. Well, he's like,
oh yeah.
Big lad. So, like, sometimes I forget how big a lot of the guys are. It's like I'm like 5.5, so I'm like
of course, yeah.
So it's like most people are big compared to me. But it's kind of like you forget because you speak to people because you've known them years. You just talk to them like they're people.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's kind of.
No, it's good having that rapport with them, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's probably because I've been around years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking literal decades at this point, aren't we, to be fair?
Gosh, you're old as balls.
Well, now, like, when I started the wrestling project, I was either 31 or 30. I was something. But, like, I'm 40 now. So I'm like, next year I'm going to be like my 50th year. So it's like, every year I was like, it's going to be last year.
And yet you're still brought back year after year.
It's an addictive business, I told you.
That's it.
You end up like with friendships with people, and you just you want people to do good, and sometimes that something you can do could help people.
Yeah.
You want to invest in certain people, and you just that you could make their lives better. And just like
definitely.
It goes a long way, and but with wrestling, it's very. A lot of the people are lovely, but there's a lot of people who take a lot as well.
Yeah.
People who are like, "What have you done for me lately?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
No, it's a hard business. It's a hard business.
Sadly, it is. It's a tough business. Yeah.
I think if you're dead nice, you just end up like me.
But we see, but this is the thing, Tony, that we want to find the nice ones. We want to find the wrestlers who are a bit unsung, who need that sort of outlet, I suppose, in that sense, because they deserve it so much more in some senses.
Well, I like, to me as well, like Juice is like the guy who is one of the unsung heroes of British wrestling.
Yeah.
He's had a very tough time lately, you know, with everything that's got on, all that, and you know, but he'll get through it. And people like him, you know, what people have got to remember is that, you know, that a lot of the guys have always had this. They've always had this, like, wherever their lives are going on, they've always had this sense of, like, you know, if the week's been crap, they've got a show to go to. For when they're making show, it's a bit like Fight Club, isn't it? That if that's funniest moment, when they're in there, they're a god. You know, it's that sense of they get from the audience and they give back, and people are going, "Yeah, you're amazing, you're amazing." Like, you know, it's like you're really good at something, and people want it.
Oh yeah.
Buy into your fantasy, and
that's the thing. There's a certain euphoria to that, isn't there? To be fair.
Yeah, and I think people, it's that sense of like when people go, "Oh, you're fantastic, you're great," you're like, "Oh, cheers." So, kind of like when people turn around to me and go, "Oh, you're the best." I'm like, no. Just shit. Yeah.
Well, do you know what, Tony?
Modesty.
We think you are the best, and
indeed,
again, I think we just want to thank you so much for obviously taking the time. You know, definitely a flashback to the past for me. Many moons ago.
Yeah.
In GPW.
To be fair though, that is one question I need to ask.
Yeah.
Will we see Mothman lace up his boots again?
Yes. Is the answer.
Oh yeah.
Love it.
Love that. Yes. Nothing else, but yes.
I'm developing the old site, the Mothman site, again, and I've recently done some videos during lockdown, some art videos of Mothman, and I did one on Mothman base. I'll send you the link so you can put it.
Like, the only thing to say is, like, anyone who's listening right now who wants to know more about Tony Knox, where can they find your work, about you? Tell us.
Okay. Well, they can't find it on FSM anymore because I died. Yeah. So just one thing. I used to work for Fighting Spirit magazine for a decade.
Right.
So that ceased to exist last year. So since that time, that's recently why I've started working on my Instagram, because for years I kind of kept stuff back. So it was like a running gag. You never see your images. It was because they were ready for like magazines.
Yeah.
Saying what happened with British wrestling, because I could work with the editor and he was great. Brian Elliott was just fantastic. And there's other wrestling magazines like Inside the Ropes and stuff like that. But I have nothing to do with them, really. It's just flavour of the month.
Yeah, of course,
I'm obviously not it. So, it's just one of them. It's kind of, at the moment, that's why I'm showcasing some of my archives on the Tony Knox 99 Instagram. So,
but it's definitely one to check out. I mean, obviously, in recent weeks, we've seen the likes of, you've seen some of the work you've done with Pac and stuff like that in the past. We mentioned there's Evo on the show. You've recently done some work with her.
Yeah, I've done some stuff with Alexis Falcon as well. And,
But there's an absolute, I mean, I imagine you put them all up, but there's a ton of stuff on there for people to check out as well, isn't it?
There's also another one, which is Tony Knox photography as well. And Adam, who is connected with NGW, he used to do the posters for PCW.
Right.
He set up an archive of some of the stuff I did. But recently, because with having time to actually do stuff and learn, I started, curating my own on Instagram, and I've really enjoyed it, to be honest.
Yeah. That must be nice to look back on some stuff as well, to be fair, some stuff you've done over the years.
I'll tell you one last story.
Yeah.
I was working for TNT. No, not TNT. TNA, sorry.
Mm.
TNA.
Oh yeah.
So I did the photography for a few years for them. I remember I was backstage at the Manchester in between matches, and I had to photograph Hulk Hogan. So I've done some pictures of Hogan. In the hallway, Bully Ray was talking to Hogan about planning the match.
Yeah.
He was going to do this spot with this old woman who recently been burgled by this man, and she basically attacked him with a cane, like hitting him with a cane. Basically, Scotland and the the TNA brought her over to the Manchester show because they did a spot where she held Bully Ray. Bully Ray went like that to her, and then Hulk Hogan came and like hit him, like that. And but I remember like I was there when they were planning that match, and that was Hulk Hogan's last match, and I had no idea that was Hogan's last match. Literally, I didn't even find out till the year when someone said,
holy shit!
Like
what an accolade! Like you were there.
That thing, that's great.
Dude.
And to be fair, with Hogan, you never would have known, would you? To be fair, he's made how many
how many last matches has he had? So to be there for his actual one.
Allegedly, that was his last match.
No, to be honest, we've seen him come back in WWE, but not in any sort of in-ring capacity. So I genuinely believe that was his last match. In all fairness,
that was it with Bully Ray.
But
during that match as well, like about a few years later, I actually had a car journey with Bully Ray, and we were talking. I was in the back of his car, and he was on the phone for the first 15 minutes. And I was thinking, like, I was literally like, there was a driver there, and there was Bully Ray there, and I had all my photography stuff on me, and like literally, I was like this. I was thinking, God, this is going to be like such a shit ride. And then he started talking, and then I was speaking to him about that, and he was like, "Oh, you were there?" And it was like, he went, "You heard history," because it was Hogan, but he's actually
unreal.
Really nice.
Yeah. Do you know what? Like a lot of people talk shit about Bully Ray, but I think what, he seems like an absolute sweetheart. And
No, he does. He seems like an awesome guy. I mean, obviously, we've only got what we see on TV, but it's nice to know that he is genuinely a decent guy.
Yeah, he's nice. I remember once as well when I went in the lift. I remember once I got in the lift, and he was in the lift, and I farted, and I was like, and I got out the lift very quickly, like. I remember thinking, "Did you just smell my farts?"
That is a claim to fame. That is a claim to fame. I don't think anyone can else can
Bully
say that.
Ray's shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
You love my fecal matter. I never told him I farted in that lift.
Yeah, probably best. Yeah.
Yeah, probably for the best. But no, Tony, honestly, thank you so much.
We do. We sincerely appreciate it, man. It's been a fantastic insight.
Yeah, you've met so many people. You've been in the business for so long, and we honestly appreciate your time tonight and stuff. And hopefully we can do it again in the future as well. I think you are an absolute. You are the absolute rite of passage for British wrestling. The amount of work that you've been involved in and stuff, and the amount of stories you got to tell. And I know we've only scratched the surface tonight, but it was great to see you again after so many years.
Hey, everybody. This is Thunder Rosa, and you're watching or listening A to the K.